Hello, everyone, for our final reread live show discussion. Hopefully not our final live show. We were just talking backstage about Mike's Stormlight read along and how they never did Rhythm of War when they did that. And we're hoping to do a Lost Metal chat. So, we just haven't planned it yet.
We're all going to die once this live show's over.
Well, I get nervous just because of holidays and life gets chaotic, but the attempt is there. We're going to try.
I think it'll happen.
Yeah. Hi.
It's going to be so exciting to see all the payoff.
Yeah, no, and I mean, I know Alan makes fun of the implications, but yeah, I'm here for the implications. Like, I'm ready.
Yeah, absolutely.
Alan's so funny. I have an Alan story once we get a little further into this. It's relevant, I promise.
No. And just for everyone in the chat, we're going to spend the first portion of this talking about Bands of Mourning and everything in Bands of Mourning, spoiler, whether it's blatantly spelled out or between the lines. And then we're going to talk about the Mistborn Secret History novella that came out right after it. And that we will talk a little bit more about Cosmere things. So if you want to tap out around then, totally understand depending on where you are in your Cosmere reading journey. But that's kind of... because there's so many cool things and I just kind of want to like geek out and talk about it. So hi, hello. So I think everyone but Stephanie was rereading this one and Stephanie got to read it for the first time.
Oh, fun.
Yeah, no, this was Stephanie's first read of Mistborn Era 2 and she's loved it as much as I hoped because it kind of has cozy mystery vibes.
Yeah, absolutely.
It really does.
If Cozy Mysteries had a lot more shooting, sure.
How do you feel about it compared to Era 1?
I don't think I like it more than Era 1, but it's completely kind of a different vibe than Era 1, which I'm okay with.
Yeah.
And I kind of knew ahead of time it was going to be a different vibe, which I think helped my experience.
Right. And enough time where you don't feel wounded still from the end of first era.
Because it's been like 2 years, I think, since I read the first era. So this was perfect timing.
Alan, yesterday I was doing a reading sprint with him and he's like, I knew it was going to have a tonal shift. I didn't know it was going to be a cartoon. Typical Alan, explosive energy about it. He does not love Wayne.
I do think even in this book, Wayne becomes more and more palatable. But I mean, I always went into him being fine with what he brought to the table, but I don't think he's as off the walls as we keep going.
I mean,
he's always a character. He's always kind of a character than a character.
Right.
Yes. He crashes the wedding.
He crashes the wedding. Like, that's a pretty big...
And like, in
a sure. He doesn't know...
way.
He still also finds the greatest sentimental moments to make incredibly inappropriate
like when he asks
questions.
Marcy, like, so
right.
sisters only hook up in the bar songs, or you're like, all right.
Yep.
No, I mean, he's still Wayne. Like, we don't... I just think it's not, like, I think Alloy of Law, I totally see it. The dialogue is, like, the cheesiest, campy stuff that could come out of Wayne's mouth. And he still has, like... That's still his personality.
Right.
But I don't know. For me, I think it... I know, Ella, was a complaint for you a lot of time. I think it weaves in a bit more appropriately. Like, I think, like... I don't know. I think he doesn't break the tension as often.
Almost in a... I know Michael has talked about this before, to break apart the serious energy when something's happening. Like, he's that person. I just don't find him funny. I think that's relatable, but I'm like, not those jokes though. Some of his jokes are just so stupid, and I'm like, all right, Wayne. But
there's less about
also know someone like that.
He got nervous about his hat once, but you're right. There's less about hats, and I mean, we'll probably talk about this way more later, like with the cool technology we learn about in this book. But I thought he was going to have way more fun with this cool, like, connection disc sort of thing. Like, I don't know. I just felt like that was like an obvious thing for Wayne to like have an affinity for, is the idea of connection and stuff like that with his love of language and culture. And stuff
There's
like
always the new book for that.
That's true. A lot of people are talking in the comments about Era 1 versus Era 2. I mean, I guess if I had to compare two completely different subgenres of fantasy, I prefer epic high fantasy over detective fantasy, but I don't love detective things, and I like this series a lot, so the fact that this makes me like a detective thing is pretty good.
Jess might like Era 2 more.
I think I might like Era 2 more.
You said that when you first reviewed it, but we've also learned that you had lots of bad takes when you first reviewed it.
I did. I've changed some takes, but I think that, like, and maybe it's because it's so different. I think I like Era 2 more.
Yeah.
What were Michael's bad takes?
He in his Shadows of Self-Review, unprompted, for no reason, hates on Milan with every fiber of his being. I didn't understand it.
I didn't like Milan.
Why didn't you like Milan?
I just felt, for the same reason that everyone doesn't like Wayne, I felt she was so obnoxious and like she was distracting from the parts I liked about the story. But for some reason on my second read through, I'm like, oh, she totally fits. Like, I don't understand what I was thinking when I was reading this before. Like,
I do think that for a Khandra, she doesn't behave like
right.
For a really old Khandra, they usually are pretty good at acting like people, and she almost acts like, I just started doing this. Oh, I'm sorry, I started talking about eating foul flesh. Does that make you uncomfortable? Like, you know that she knows that it does. So then
I'm trying to think of like the comparison, but I like the idea of someone that exists in this almost like godlike state, enjoying the complexities and nuance of being a human and the fact that humans are kind of stupid. And I kind of embraced her like, oh yeah, technically I'm supposed to be like high and mighty and special, but also I kind of like humans. They're kind of fun.
She really likes Wayne.
Well, sure.
That's what, like, when I finished listening to Mike's Shadows of Self-Review the first time, I'm like, oh, I'm excited to see what happens with you when that scene happens in Bands of Mourning. It was just one of those things where, like, it's just such a thing.
Yeah, and the second read through, I feel like it just kind of fits. You're like, oh yeah, that checks, and like they made their little connection over like enjoying analyzation of accents or whatever. So, sure, yeah, that's fun.
I mean, Wayne is he doesn't act like most humans. It weirdly makes more sense for him to be attracted to a Khandra than not attracted to, just with another, have a shot with.
His whole breakup scene is so good because it's the weirdest one-sided breakup scene that you've ever seen, and it's I think that's the part where another moment where it's kind of serious and it's kind of heartfelt and it feels like it's going to be this really wholesome moment when she's like, oh, I'm glad you're moving on, and then he decides to ask a question that is completely
I don't love that he is like, oh, if your girlfriend's fat, I don't care. I don't love that, and I don't love that when he's talking to Marcy about Renette, he's like, it's probably just a phase, and I'm like, dude, why does it have to be?
Wayne is definitely not someone who I don't agree with all of his ideals.
He is a full exploration of a character that you want to like, but he's got some really rough
He's got some bad takes.
And like, I mean, we all have a friend, right? We all have a friend that we like this person. They're a nice person, or a family member, and you're like, this person's a really nice person. Yes. But also, they do definitely have a really, really bad section of them that we just kind of have to like.
Unfiltered, you don't want to go out to eat with them. You're like, let's eat at our house because you don't know what's going to come out of their mouth. Kind of
you don't know what they're going to say to the waiter. You don't know what they're going to say in public. Exactly. Yeah.
I think that kind of person, you usually know more about them, and you know, like their history of why they are that way. Wayne, we never get that. Like, usually if a family member making excuses for, you're like, oh, they were raised in a different era. It was a different time. It was a different place in the country. For Wayne, he's just...
I mean, he was raised in the roughs, I guess. I mean, I think that's part of maybe the downside of the world building of Mistborn Era 2 is, like, we don't actually really know a lot of the intricacies of the culture of roughs versus the city versus the side cities. What are, like, besides, obviously, there's class prejudice and stuff like that, but we don't know, like, what are the, like, things that are like seen as taboo in this society. We can imprint what we know is seen as taboo in our society and our industrial age, but like it's not really expanded upon in the book, right?
Rich says the friend you don't invite to the live stream. That's true. That's true. There's some people that you like to talk to on Discord, but you would be afraid to put them on your channel.
So we've been talking about characters. I thought a character who I actually enjoyed her arc more on reread this time through in this book than I had previously was Marcy. Like her, like figuring out her place. And I think that was a big theme in this book in general, is people figuring out, where do I fit in? What's my role? How useful am I? You know, what's my path? You know, not trying to follow Vin's path, not trying to like break who you are. Like I love near the end, Steris's chart of how useful she is and her like being like a 7. Right. But you know, like I thought like her journey was really interesting, and I loved that she got to use the Bands of Mourning first, just for like a moment. I just thought that was really epic.
I am a little bit sad because I like the idea of you having these 4 completely different characters, where Wax and Wayne have this obvious like bro connection, and then you have Mercy, who is like lawful good kind of, and then you have you had the addition of Steris, and I'm a little bit sad that she might not be like along for the hijinks of the next book because she's decided she wants to go a different route, but it makes sense.
She's going to uncover mysteries though, and she will be my info dump section. I don't know for sure, but
true. And she likes, you know, she's the one that likes to analyze.
She's going to be Shallan from Way of Kings.
No, please don't say that. Just
I mean, that's kind of, I feel like what Angela just described.
Except that Mercy is an infinitely better character than Shallan.
Infinitely.
Yes.
More harsh takes. We talked about this before the stream. Sanderson has certain character traits that he likes to carry along with his characters, and Shallan and Mercy are different versions that have similar like core tenets to them.
Sure.
You know? But yes, Steris got to shine in this.
I love her.
And she's my favorite. And also like Steris was the first time I read a character, and then I learned that she was coded as autistic, and I realized, oh, I'm not like neurotypical. Because like so many things she said resonated with me, and like how I prepare for social situations, the lists that I make. Like, we don't use banners for these live streams. I have 20 banners ready that we don't use, but it was there for my preparation. You know, like I love her so much. And it also, for me, called out my own internalized ableism, because I hated her so much on a first read. Like, I hated Steris.
Oh, really? You did
of
mention that you wanted the Maris relationship to work.
Yeah, I wanted Mercy and Wax, and I also she read to me as so cold and so distant, and just like, I did not like her. And then I read this book and I realized, oh, I was responding to her personality in a very like ableist way. And like, I read these back in 2011. I was a high schooler.
That's what I was going to ask, because I remember you talking about Arrow 1 and having you were in love with Ellen.
Yeah. I still am. That hasn't changed.
I didn't want to assume that you'd first read this when you were younger, but I do think she's a character that is appreciated by adults, maybe, who are recognizing these specific aspects of themselves, and then they see it in her. Because I read it as an adult, and I always thought Steris seemed like the kind of character that there was more to her than what you first get. And I think because I always was frustrated with Wayne's just assumptions immediately about her made me like, no, I bet she's awesome though.
I mean, you were right, at least at that point, because she is awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, do you have to read Secret
Sanderson's always, I mean, first of all, I think Katie's making fun of us. I'm not really sure. I know it's all in good fun, Kieran, but the actual answer is Sanderson thinks you should read it after Bands of Mourning. You can read it after Mistborn Era 1.
I read it after Mistborn Era 1 and I understood. It wasn't like, what is happening?
But like, if you read it before Bands of Mourning, and I don't even know how important this reveal is, because I feel like after Stormlight Archive, this reveal is like all over the place, but Bands of Mourning is the reveal that Kelsier is back. That's
as a minor spoiler. Even in Secret History has like a blurb, but it's
to it,
major spoilers for Mistborn Era 1, minor spoilers for Era 2.
Yeah. And like, that's the spoiler though. It's like
fun.
I don't know, man. I don't know. It felt like a good joke. But no, I mean, even like one of my friends, actually, because we were discussing other Cosmere books, he even missed the Kelsier reveal at the end of Bands of Mourning because he missed the reference of the scars. He thought the person with the thing in his eye was just another scene of Marsh. He missed like the detail of it. Oh. So he just thought it was Marsh. He didn't realize it was. And I thought that was fun on reread of being like, because I think my first read, I thought it was the Lord Ruler. Like, I was like, oh, the Lord Ruler's still around? What happened there? Like, I don't know what Sazed did. And then it's like, no, it was Kelsier being the Lord Ruler. And I just thought that was really fun to like see what he was doing.
So the thing I told you at the beginning that I had to say about Alan yesterday, because he was supposed to join our read along and he hasn't had the chance to finish yet. And he's like, I don't know, I'm nervous because I had someone said something once, and I think they slipped, and if it's true, I'm gonna riot. And I was like, okay, well, can you tell me? And then he like typed in the private chat, he's like, that Kelsier's still alive, and I'm just like, okay. Like trying not to, I told him.
I mean, I know, like I know that's what he means all the time, and I'm like, you will riot. Yeah.
I mean, I will admit that I mean, we'll talk about Secret History later, I guess. I still hated it. I hated it. I was like, gosh, this again. I thought maybe I would like it more. I didn't. As soon as he starts calling him Fuzz, I'm like, all right, can we? I think Kelsier's cool, and we're making him annoying and kind of a joke. I don't know. Anyway, sorry.
Well, I don't ever understand why people love Kelsier so much.
Same. That's why I don't think I get as mad about it.
Well, because I don't care about him. He's like a mentor figure who's there for a short period of time and then has gone from the story. So people are like, Kelsier is my favorite character in all of Cosmere. I'm like,
exactly like this.
It's a sexual favorite. Like they really like him on that.
I mean, he has scars. Level. People are into that.
That's true. I hate the end with the dumb reunion moment where like Ellen comes through and he's like, are you trying to look like a ripoff of the Lord Ruler? And he's like, wow, I hate you already. And then Vin comes through and she like doesn't even stumble as she comes in. She's like just so awesome. And she's like, do you really understand love, Kelsier? Bye. And I'm like, I hate this. I hate this so much. It was my favorite thing in the Cosmere. I don't like it.
Sure. That's fine. I don't think I have nearly.
Sorry.
That's fine. But a cool thing about this book with the Kelsier adjacency is this whole group of people that almost feels like they're forgotten by Sazed, or like he just kind of leaves to, suffer, and who have always been around in Mistborn Era 1 that we've never looked at, who like have their own culture and have this cool tech. And I'm really curious.
Era 1 feel even more contained, even though it seemed like, oh, it's end of the world level. You realize you really don't see that much of the world. You see these few cities.
I think Maya had an opposite reaction to you with the end of that section.
It's emotional when they died in Hero Pages. I'm just kidding. It's okay if you. Most people love it. I think I'm the only person who hates it.
I mean, I don't think I love it, but I mean, I do think I remembered reading Bands of Mourning when I first read my hardcover and I got to the end and it said there was a novella out, because I think I read it in like 2 or 3 days, and then I went and I found the novella and I was like, what is this? I was excited. Nice. I was just like geeking out.
I think I like Secret History more for the implications than I like it for
yeah, I think
like any of that other stuff that happens, because I think
I think that's
especially on reread it's really cool.
Yeah, I rereading this, so I hated Secret History the first time, but on reread with all of the Rhythm of War and the rest of the Cosmere in hindsight, I think that the like greater Cosmere stuff that's happening there made me way more interested in that, as well as like the exploration of preservation and ruin inside of the like the opposite side of seeing it from Mistborn. Like I was enjoying like the really tragic and sad story of preservation dying.
Yeah, when he's like, "Don't leave me."
Well, like the whole section where he's dying, and you're trying to think like,
okay. You have a smile on your face while you say it, though, because you're like, I still hate it.
Well, I actually enjoyed it a lot more this time. Like I think, and I mentioned this before we went live. I think I was expecting, because I love Wax, and I know that seems to be a minority opinion here. I think in my brain, Kelsier was more Wax-like, and so seeing him, remembering he was a little more goofy and jovial and like Han Solo-esque, seeing him in Mistborn Secret History made it seem less awkward when I read it this time, now that I had the separation and I can understand the Cosmere better in my own head.
I can't decide if what I did with my blinds makes anything better. God damn it, it's a sunny day.
I think that maybe, I don't know how it feels, but I think it looks better because it's not like slats.
Yeah, it doesn't feel different to me. It's a cold day in Boston. But no, I mean, I think that was something I liked, because I think this book really solidified to me that my least favorite part of Era 2 is Wax. Wax is like if I had to pick, like, if I had to tier rank protagonists in the Cosmere, he's at the bottom for me. Like, Wax is my least favorite protagonist.
He doesn't really have a personality.
I like Wax.
I mean,
I
like him.
Lift has to be the bottom.
Lift is not a protagonist. She is a side character. I am saying protagonist.
She's a protagonist in her short story novella.
Bottom?
You know what I mean. A protagonist, yes.
I mean, she's gonna be one, let's face it.
She's not one yet. I don't have to put her on my list.
I can understand people not liking Wax as much as me, but there's no way that Wax
Who's
is the
your at
bottom.
the bottom? What's your bottom?
Vivenna or
I love Vivenna.
Shallan. Or
I love Shallan. Again,
I used to love Shallan.
I even like.
So I'm hearing that you just don't like
Hrathen.
women.
Michael, this is not happening. I like Hrathen more
Starrett
than
is one of my favorite characters in the Cosmere.
Okay. So she's the one woman that you point to and say that, no, I like Starrett.
Oh, I mean, most of the women I like in the Cosmere are in the Stormlight Archive, so maybe it's just, well, I like, what's the name of the girl in Elantris? She's awesome.
I don't remember her name.
Yeah, she's
I mean,
awesome.
I don't think Wax is bad, but here's the thing. When we're in Wax's head and he's doing his, like, sleuthing or problem solving, I just find it so dry and very didactic. And, like, it's just so...
Do you like Batman?
I think that's another thing, Michael. I think
it doesn't give me as much Batman. It gives me more Sherlock.
I don't usually like Bruce Wayne, and it's a very rare Batman piece of media where my favorite part of it is Batman.
Sure.
So I think that's a fair connection. I think the only Batman I really have liked, which again, hot take, is the newest Batman with Rob Pattinson. That's the first time I have liked Batman as a character in a Batman thing. Except for Lego Movie, but does that count?
Lego Movie definitely counts. He's great in the Lego Movie.
I think for some people, they like Wayne because they'll say, well, at least Wayne has a personality and Wax is so dry. But I feel like Wax comes across as dry because he's next to Wayne, if that makes sense. It's kind of like, I feel the reverse because I like Wax because he feels like a person. And he's not my favorite protagonist from the Cosmere. I just like that. I think he's just I think I connect the fact that his behavior feels rooted in just like he's older and he's just pretty done, like he's done with, and I like where he doesn't really feel comfortable in these social interactions and things like that. He's been somebody who has experienced a lot of pain in his life, and so it's kind of made him not as accepting of his emotions, it feels like. So I like it, but it does mean he comes across definitely dry. I love hot dad is enough personality for me.
I like him in his scenes with Starrett. Like, I love the interactions of him and Starrett, but I think he gets to be on his own too much to brood, and I just need him to not be allowed to brood as much.
I said it on Twitter. I think that the romance between Wax and Starrett might be one of my favorite romances in fantasy. Like, it's fairly subtle, but it's so good when they fall in love discovering like a clerical error, and the exploration of like finding out that she likes a little bit more adventure and him understanding like why she is kind of weird, because she likes to plan, she doesn't feel comfortable socially, and so she has her own coping mechanisms, and then her also kind of liking the more adventurous side, and then them learning to communicate together and work together to find out who they actually are instead of just who they portray publicly. Like, she finds out why Wax is the way he is. She understands parts of him more than he does. And then he starts to be like, I'm glad, like, it's uncomfortable when she just says things like she means them. But also, I kind of like that she's just freaking brutally honest all the time instead of putting up a front. And then them having the moment where they actually start to fall in love for real. It's really freaking good and, like, healthy in a way that like a lot of fantasy romances kind of aren't.
I find that they both appreciate each other for being genuinely who they are. Right. I almost think Starrett ends up kind of just bouncing off what you said. She is loving him because she's realizing that he is exactly this person. He's not, because you hear all these stories about him, and then also with all the other nobility and things, everybody's kind of putting on a front. That's what she's used to. And with him, what you see is what you get. Yes, and I think absolutely. It's same in reverse, where he's like, what you just said, where she'll just say things, and he's like, and when she plans things, it's not to be false, it's because she's trying to figure out the best way to function within society, which he can connect with. So yeah, yes. I agree, they're cute. It's still
so good.
The Sanderson arranged marriage trope, but I actually like these two.
It's a weird one though.
He has a type.
It's weird because they fall in love and get married before the arranged marriage happens, which I guess, frick, that happens elsewhere.
Yes, it happens a lot with him.
Frick, that's true.
It happens a lot.
Can we not just have friends? Does every fantasy book have to have coupling between main characters? Like, why could they not just have been platonic friends?
I mean, you have Wayne and Marcy. They're like friends.
Yeah, because for a little bit, I'm like, are they going to be a thing? And I'm glad that they're not.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, but you have Wayne and Milan. Like, everybody is coupled
with,
except for Marcy.
Well, I want Marcy with Atki really bad. I know you don't want another ship, but that's where I'm at.
Oh, that's where it's going, I think, yeah. Which I thought that was fun, too.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think it's required, and I actually do love when things focus on the platonic, but if...
It's rare.
I can give you a whole list.
Give me a list. Message me. Thank you.
My request is that we get more Marcy and Steris. That's what I would like to see, is the two of them interacting a lot more.
I mean, I think, though, they even mention in the books, though, that, like, they are essentially sort of strangers to each other.
Yeah, it was she said she didn't find out about her until she was, I think, a teenager.
Yeah, and then they would have kind of been treated a little bit differently because...
but it could be fun seeing them find that sisterhood between each other. And
absolutely.
Yeah,
exactly. That's what I would like.
Maybe they'll get paired off together and, like, less of the action, and they will be our info dumping couple.
That'd be cool.
I would
be. But Steris wants to be able to fly through the skies a few times.
That's true. I love how much she likes adventure versus Marcy. Like, Marcy's like, I don't like this whole flying through the sky thing. I'm uncomfortable.
I'm wondering if, because we see Marcy, she's very good at comforting victims or the people that have gone through a lot in these robberies and things like that. I wonder if we're going to see her something with that, because she is good at that aspect, because she's also studied people's behaviors and things like that.
Right. She's got the psychological angle.
Yeah. And she seems to be the person who Wax is kind of set in, okay, these are the laws. And then she's the one that's like, well, let's figure out what can make these laws better. Because there's a great line about how I think she thinks if we've had to shoot someone, then society is already failed. Right. And I'm like, that's like one of the best lines in the book.
No, I love Marcy as like our view into what should we be trying to achieve as a society. Because I also think, like, as I said, like in our alloy void discussion, this could get really close to just like our standard typical like propaganda sort of book, and it's really not. You guys keep talking. I'm going to move a chair because the sun is... I didn't expect the sun to be so aggressive.
I'm just loving Jen Avax's comment.
I love this.
I can show you the world.
It is it is a mix of contrast, because Marcy is looking to like fix society from its core, and Wax is more like the realist of like, yo, I kind of agree that might be the right answer, but also some of these people out here right now are monsters, and we got to do something about it. And so it's a little bit of a like, you got to find the balance between the two, probably, because like the stuff that's going on in the book is wild with Suit and all of the scheming and plotting behind the scenes.
Yeah, I think it's hard to not apply our own social situations now to the book, but I do feel like that balance of the people who are like, okay, well, we need to do what we have to do now to keep people safe, and then other people being like, well, maybe like more idealistic, but the idealistic is going to move things forward, where these people are going to kind of try to help keep things I feel bad saying the word safe, but like safe in the meantime, so
as safe as you can.
You sort of need the two to help each other.
I don't know.
Frick, you know what? It kind of actually is.
A little bit. Although, yeah.
So what was everyone's favorite Steris scene? I have many, but I don't know. There's just so many good ones.
I don't know if I have a favorite, because they all sort of blend together, not in a negative way, but in the actual culmination of this actual relationship. But like, obviously it sort of comes to a head with the finding the clerical error scene, but even the stuff like leading up to it, where they're nervous about each other, but then culminating in the end where, they actually have a proposal there.
Well, the scene Rich is talking about, where she gives the whole list, like that's the one thing I remembered from Bands of Mourning. And I remembered, we haven't even talked about it, but the Telsin reveal. I remembered Wax's sister was Butt, and I remembered Steris giving a list to hotel clerk. Those were the two things I remembered from Bands of Mourning.
I
just like when she pulls a gun out from underneath her dress and was like, you should have seen me when I was trying a shotgun.
I remember Stephanie Voxered me when she finally got to the part on the train I was waiting for her to get to with the book.
Oh, yeah.
Poor Steris. That made me feel bad for her.
Me too. I was just
sad.
She didn't have Google. She was trying her best.
She was trying. And she said she took the prostitutes out, and then they didn't want to tell her anything when they found
I'm
out.
like, what the heck, man?
She's trying to be prepared.
That was my favorite.
Yeah.
I did like when they're leaving the hotel quickly and she's like telling them being framed for murder is on this page.
No, like I truly love her so much. She's just phenomenal. What did you guys so Stephanie, did you see the Telson thing coming? I think I didn't the first time, but I wasn't as surprised because it was kind of a, you know, like some authors have certain formulas to their reveals. I think at this point I've gotten used to a Sanderson reveal when I read Bands of Mourning, so I wasn't like completely blindsided, like say with the Tensoon reveal or something like that. But
yeah, I'm also horrible at predicting stuff, so I just kind of go with it. So I didn't really see it coming, but it wasn't as shocking as like the Tensoon reveal.
Sure,
but
it got me first time as well.
Yeah,
it weirdly is very similar to the Tensoon reveal, where you have what you think is your enemy in front of you, and then it turns out the person by them that you think is on your side. So it is really similar, but I don't think I felt too much either way because the Bleeder reveal in the second book is a great twist.
Yeah.
For this one, I almost feel like you can't really top that. So it was kind of just, you don't know much about his sister too, but then rereading it again, having the book start with a prologue with his sister,
right, where she's the bad guy, kind of.
Yeah, you kind of
the prologue's really messed up, by the way. Like
really that kid
right. Right.
And the fact that they kicked him out because he murdered the serial killer.
Yeah, and you're like, I think maybe you made a bad call on that one.
Yeah, I think for me, it was kind of one, especially on reread, it's like, yeah, it was really obvious that she was like up to no good and that I shouldn't have taken her at face value or anything like that.
I think I was nervous that it was going to turn into, I feel kind of bad. You know, the Ember and the Ashes series, there's a plot line that like follows a similar thing, which I won't say too much.
I don't know the series.
I was worried it was going to turn into when we finally find this person who's been, held for so long, that as soon as they rescued them and they're like, okay, let's sneak away, that they would just be like, no, and they would like run into everything and just ruin everything for everybody. I was a little nervous, but then you find out she was doing that because she was trying to make sure that the people didn't reveal anything. But I was like, don't be that person that just, we finally rescue you and then you end up making everything really difficult.
Yeah.
Sure. I didn't realize, because I only read it for the first time, I think last year. I didn't realize how little of the book actually focuses on that section with like from the airship, I guess, on. In my brain, that was like most of the book was the adventure part outside the city, but it was actually like the last maybe third, maybe less.
It turned into Indiana Jones a little bit.
Right. And so after, like, as Jenka Vox was saying, like it feels now reading it in hindsight, it's like, oh, this is a really short turnaround from we rescued her to she turns and she's evil. But in my brain, that was like a long time. And I don't know if I took a break when I was reading that before, but it's really not. I mean, they were only together maybe 2 weeks max, I think.
Well, but she doesn't really do much. She doesn't really help them. It's not really like a dramatic turn. She's kind of just there and then like, ha-ha, just kidding. I didn't expect her to be in charge as much as she was. Like, I know that I was kind of like side-eyeing her, but I didn't expect her to be like, oh no, actually, like, Suit is my biatch.
For real. Like that.
I am the sequence.
Yeah, that was.
Which that's such an dumb organization hierarchy sequence. Like the sequence. Like, oh my God. Sorry.
Yeah.
I think if they had put a little bit.
Fibonacci sequence.
If we had seen Wax really, really concerned for her a little bit earlier when you find out that Suit has her, if you'd seen him like this plaguing him constantly, but it's like every now and then he's like, I mean, I'm doing this to find them, and then we just move on. He doesn't really dwell on it. I think if he were to think about it a lot more, then it would have been a bigger deal, because you don't have time with her as much. But at least if you have the idea of her, then it would feel more like a betrayal too, I think.
Yeah, I think that's why the Bleeder reveal was so good, because it was building for 2 books.
Yeah.
This was more like, we found her, she's bad still. Okay.
There was a little bit of like, I haven't seen you in a long time, so I guess I don't really feel much.
It was very much a family obligation. Like, it was Wax's classic, I'm doing it because it's right, and that's my personality. I do things because they're right. This is why I don't like Wax a lot. It's just a very boring personality trait.
on reread, it becomes more obvious that what's his uncle's name?
Oh, Edwin or something?
Okay, when Edwin decides to come in, like surrender and bring himself in there, like naked, whatever, it makes so much sense on reread to be like, oh, why in the world would he ever do that? But the first time I'm like, why is he doing this? Like I was completely bought in, completely sold out. I'm like, I can't believe he's actually going in there. What does he have hidden? And he does. I mean, he has magic powers hidden, but yeah, it makes way more sense when you're like, oh, he has them all.
Well, and also like
Wax should have known that.
Like our only interactions with Telsin in the book is when she's being like a really shitty older sister.
Mm-hmm. Which yeah, she maintains that. She doesn't really change at all.
Yeah. Like I don't know, and she's just I guess I don't know. It was more like it was a weird reveal for me. I didn't know if I loved it or hated it. I more was enjoying the after facts of the reveal of the really cool discs. I really like the discs like a lot. Like my Cosmere brain was like very into learning about the discs. And this was the book we were talking about our twin-born abilities, I think last live stream. This is the one where like, yes, I want the heating ability. That's the one I want. I want the one where I can be the appropriate temperature no matter where I am at.
That would be nice. Can I cool myself?
Yes, that's what you do. You can cool yourself. You put your heat into the metal mind, and then you're cool, and you can take it back when you're too cold. Like, yes, that's what I want as my pure chemist ability.
I never even thought about it like I thought about the other powers, but being able to be cool when everybody else is hot sounds rad.
No, like that's like what I want.
That would be amazing. People would pay really good money for that.
So I always wanted to be like a pewter and whatever that metal is.
There's the fun details about, I think it's more in Shadows of Self, where you have the soothing parlors, so people can come in so they feel a little better. And then in this one, you see in the newspaper clippings, there's an ad for one of those places. But it would be kind of cool to see that as well if it became this popular thing where you can just have it all the time, like you can rent or buy something. I don't know. It'd be cool.
Have you heard of drugs? Because I'm pretty sure that's what those are.
No, but I know what else I'm talking
in the world building.
No, but like, so something I was thinking about in this book is how, and like it comes up where in reality, the set's not wrong. Why do only a certain number of people genetically get to have the powers that they have? And it's honestly becoming a really big advantage in many ways and can really advance technology.
And it was before too. Like it totally was before.
It totally is, and it's always been a class thing. So the fact that now it can become even more commoditized into these resources of like, oh, you have this person who just because they were born as this type of feruchemist can fill these discs, and then suddenly you have heat that you can take from it, and you can go on a cold expedition. Like expanding that world building, and also the discussions of, well, maybe we should make this more equal. If we can recreate the Bands of Mournings in a way where everyone could have access to powers, it's a really interesting can of worms that Sanderson's attempting to play with, and I don't know if he will commit.
I feel like it's what will launch us into the spy ones, because it'll be more regular world, but it'll be regular world like air conditioning, and our modern luxuries will be a result of this technology. Maybe. I don't know.
Maybe. I mean, I hope when he does the spy one, he doesn't attempt to do noir. I can't imagine Sanderson pulling off noir. I don't like noir anyways, but
I feel like that is kind of the vibe he might go for a little bit. And you know what? I wouldn't mind, because
at least he won't do what I hate about noir, but
he won't. I mean, he's not going to be Jim Butcher, but
he's leaning so into the silly that I'm like, I wouldn't mind a series where it's a little bit more like dark and brooding and serious, just to, just for something different.
For my own information, I mean, for a hypothetical person, what are you talking about? The spy series?
Oh, so there's going to be like an 80s, 90s one.
Oh, okay. For some reason, I thought, Era 4 is supposed to be sci-fi. I just sort of skipped over the fact that there was an in-between stuff.
I think people forget, because I think they get excited about the 4th era because it's...
Well, I feel like he announced the space opera before he announced the spy one. So I feel like people knew the sci-fi was coming.
Well, because he actually always did announce the spy one, but this one we're talking about right now wasn't supposed to exist.
Okay.
So he always had planned for 3 eras, and then this era showed up.
I thought it was partially because of Skyward and that series. It made people excited about Era 4. But you know what? We all have our theories. I guess none of us really know.
I mean, who knows what's going to happen? I'm just content with whatever he has. And I know he has a plan for if he suddenly, unfortunately passes away, and I will get the end of a story somewhere, and I'll be content with whatever I get. So that's where I'm
Something
at.
that alludes back to the magic and the technology and some of the stuff from the previous book was Harmony sort of thought that he might have made a mistake because he made living too easy for the people, which is why they hadn't like discovered radio waves or electricity like they should have. But that's basically what we see is these people that have sort of been abandoned. They were forced to be like, hey, we got to live out here. How do we figure out technology? And they created airships. They created the discs. Like they figured it out. And
but
so
it's a little ham-fisted, a little bit of like him just putting in what he wanted to see of like, he has this very strong philosophy of like, only suffering is the mother of ingenuity. And so then he put it in.
I mean, yes, but also it kind of is that. It kind of do be like that.
It's like it's a classic theme in sci-fi. At least I come across it all the time. So like I wasn't surprised he took it that way, but I do think, although I don't necessarily I agree with Roger, it's subtlety does not know this theme. Like for Sanderson.
But the alternative to necessity being the mother of invention is capitalism being the mother of invention, and that's just way darker, which could be what the Spy series is about. Like
I feel like it's a little bit in this one.
Yeah.
You have the people that are mistreated and being taken advantage of, the workers and stuff.
Yeah. No, I mean, but the idea of when you don't have an external pressure to force society to move forward, it naturally you stagnate is a classic thing. I don't even know if that's something that people are basing in their thought experiments on past events in human history, because I'm not a history buff. But I even just read a short story in the Way Spring Arrives, the new Chinese translated collection, that was like essentially exactly that idea as well.
We talked about, we did get into this because I mentioned in Guns, Germs, and Steel how there's also the argument that when people have more time, then they therefore have more time to be innovative and to create and to experiment because they're not hungry and they're not unsafe. And so they have more downtime, and more downtime can lead to creative minds creating. Sorry, I didn't mean to.
No. I mean, I think the whole idea, and I think that's the whole point of Harmony, is moderation is more important than any extreme. Like, the chances are you should probably not have everything be super easy or super hard, but like, I think that's what the idea of Harmony is supposed to be.
Yeah, but then the question becomes, why did Harmony leave those people in the frozen wasteland?
Almost
like you can't not know
that concept. Australia.
Yeah, man. Look at the creatures there. They're behemoths compared to what we got in the Eastern.
I know. I'm just like complaining about fruit flies all the time. I don't have deadly scorpions.
Yeah. It's like, oh, Komodo dragons in my backyard. Oops.
Scorpion things suck. If anybody is curious. But Roger, to your question, like I'm curious too. I wonder if it's that he was like, well, let's see what happens when I don't play a role. But then in Secret History, you also see I don't know if it's because it was preservation alone, but preservation was like rooted more in the Luthadel area and that part of Scadrial. And I don't know if there's something that keeps Harmony from seeing clearly. I don't know.
It seems like, well, and when Harmony is with Wax, when Wax dies, which we haven't talked about, which I think that's another reason why Bands of Mourning is not my favorite, because it was like such a, I think, lazy version of the resurrection trope.
Yes. I agree.
It's the most blatant version where God's like, hey, do you want to go back to life? And he's like, I guess.
But when he's having the conversation with Harmony and we have the red shield around the planet, which is, presumably tied to whatever this Trell situation is.
Right.
Like, maybe that's affecting him. I don't know.
I mean,
because he can't see that one metal.
He can't see the one metal, and he obviously okay. I want to think Sazed had a blind spot to these humans that existed in the South. Like, I can't really.
Yeah, that's what Rogers.
Yeah.
I also don't know if that's true. Like, you have this. This is, I mean, it's somewhat speculation, and obviously everyone's entitled to their own opinion. But like, you have this like, someone moves this lawman, and then with Mistborn Secret History, you realize that like Kelsier was just a tool of ruin the whole time, and then you realize that when Harmony exists, and this is a little bit obviously into the Lost Metal, you go, well, maybe Harmony's way of helping the people in the South was sending Kelsier down there. Like he is now suddenly he wasn't allowed to actually be preservations because he was too much ruins, but now that Harmony exists, maybe.
Yeah, but he fixed the planet, so he could have moved them into the same basin with everybody else.
He could have, but
I don't really I assume we'll get an answer to it, because we're going to be more with this society. I'm sure someone's going to be like, Harmony, why'd you miss this? Like,
timeline wise, I could be wrong, but doesn't am I thinking of the wrong people? Because doesn't Kelsier start to go that direction before the end of Cure of Ages?
Kelsier is so it's after Spook has his Mistborn powers and he puts in an earring. Kelsier's still trapped in the cognitive plane. So he doesn't get into the physical plane until after what they call this event. This starts with
the Catasandra or whatever.
Yeah, so Kelsier is not on the physical plane until after all of that.
I thought he kind of went over there before he was on the physical plane, though.
I
think he noticed it when he was traveling. Yeah. He was like, "There's something to the south over there," but then he kept going on to the ocean.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I knew he went to the Irie, but which is how they say.
You're right that he does like take note. Like that's like a thing.
Okay, maybe that's what I'm thinking of then.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Are we going to move on to Secret History?
Well, Stephanie, I just want to. That death scene, I hate because, like Michael said, it's the most.
It's a weird one
version of it.
It's my least favorite version. It's up there with like one of my least favorite ones is the Harry Potter Dumbledore death scene. Like I hate that one too, and it's the same idea. Like it's like the same thing, and I hate it.
I don't know why it couldn't just be he was about to die, and then like as he's in this in between, he has this conversation, and then the bands of mourning heal him. That would have been fine. Why did he have to act? I feel like and then he died was for drama, and then for Wayne to have his moment with a gun.
Are we allowed to talk about more Cosmere stuff here now?
All right, everyone who's here, Mike's going to explode. We're going to talk. What specific part of the Cosmere are you going to talk about, Mike?
I was going to talk about Warbreaker, I think. Okay.
All right, he's talking about Warbreaker. We're actually in Cosmere mode, but don't spoil plot points of books.
Okay, like, the thing is, like, the ability to die and come back is something that's explored in Warbreaker, because if somebody's super invested, they might get the chance to like come back. And that's sort of what happens to him. Is he is supposed to be stupid invested, and when he dies, presumably, not, as Harmony says, not everybody gets that same choice. So maybe he gets that same choice because he's like a baller magic boy.
But I think we can all agree that the way that is handled in terms of storytelling is lazy.
It's weird because he's like, you want the red pill or the blue pill? And the red pill is you go to Earth, and the blue pill is you go to heaven with your wife. And he's just like, oh, I'm taking the red pill. Like,
if it was just stupid invested, then the Lord Ruler could have gone back if he wanted.
Well, I guess
I'm not sure the Lord Ruler couldn't have gone back.
No, like, the Lord Ruler in Secrets of Mistborn, they do make it a point that if the Lord Ruler, because he ascended, wanted to stay on the cognitive plane, he could have.
But it wasn't go back to the physical plane.
It doesn't unless have some like I'm better than this moment. Like I'm not going to stay here with all of you.
But no, he's just like, I tried. I'm done.
With Warbreaker, though, that's a realized part of their world, and it's not really a thing in Mistborn. It's like cognitive shadows can happen, but people don't just like, you know what, I really want to stay. So I don't feel like that's as much of a thing.
The Lord Ruler sort of gives me the vibes of like, frick, I can't be the king here. I'm taking my sandbox toys and leaving. Like he kind of just like, I know the world's going to crap. Screw y'all.
I mean, he wasn't
let's see how you do with person. He's the kind of person that wants everybody to fail after he leaves.
Sure.
Like, well, let's see you do.
But I just get the vibes that in Scadrial specifically, the rules that have been semi-established are the more invested you are, the longer you persist in the cognitive plane before moving on.
Right.
And so the Lord Ruler's special case was he basically could have stayed if he felt like it seemed like, but the whole being able to go and come back to the physical plane has not been explored.
Yeah, that one wasn't explored because similarly, that's why Kelsier could stay because he ascended, and Vin could have stayed but chose not to.
I mean, can I talk about something from Stormlight too? Like,
Stormlight through Oathbringer because Stephanie hasn't read Rhythm of War.
But we're talking Scadrial. Sir.
Yeah, we are talking Scadrial.
Well, no, but
not Roshar, and we already know that the cognitive realm is different.
It is cognitive realm related.
Yeah, but the cognitive realm is different in every planet.
It does change a little bit between planets. That's true, but at its core, there are like the three things, and investiture is key to all of it. And stuff.
Right.
It just seems like with the wax thing, like this would have happened before, and I don't like how open. Because I'm like, Wax, is he the most though? Tied to like there's not another person in this world.
I just felt like Wax was a standard twinborn. He wasn't more special than other twinborns.
He was Harmony's tool though.
That was the key. Better.
It doesn't make him more objectively better. It makes him more likely that Harmony would be like, I kind of want you to help me still.
Well, yeah, and like, so Rich is bringing up a point here. I think Rich, when Sazed was first holding his powers, he thought, oh, I fixed the bodies. And so he was thinking he could make the ties, but I think Vin disagreed with her experience in the preservation. It's like, I don't know. I don't think we actually could go back to our bodies.
I remember at the end of the Hero of Ages in the writing, Sazed says, I haven't figured out a way to bring them back yet. So he didn't know how to do that.
Yeah, like I think he thought he could, and Vin's like, I don't think you can, and we're fine leaving anyways. That because I just reread Secrets of Mistborn this morning, and that's how I took that scene.
I know, I just mean like in Hero of Ages, it's very clear that he states like, because I think he would have wanted to, but he's like, I don't know how. I repaired their bodies, but I can't bring their souls back.
Yeah, like the connection was tethered, like separated, and stuff like that. So,
so I'll be curious to hear his explanations of how Kelsier managed to reestablish.
And it's obvious that it's because of experiments he did with Spook that led to that book that they have read. So.
Yeah, because they made it very clear that like Kelsier's ties to the physical plane were broken, and so he could not use any of those like things to get back into the physical plane. So something happened, and we don't know. It's
gotta be something with a spike, right?
It has. Think. Well, that's why I think part of why he has the spike in his eye, and I think at the end of Secret's history, I took it like he needed to tie himself to something else. So I think it meant maybe using a body that's not his, but also we see it has scars, so I don't really understand what physical thing he's in as his zombie. I don't know. Cool. Like, I don't really know what he's in.
Because a Khandra took his body in the end of the Final Empire, so then like, does he somehow have a Khandra take his body and then he like goes into that?
He doesn't have to be physical to manifest in the physical plane necessarily.
But in the last scene of Bands of Mourning, we see a visual of a physical person with scars on his hands.
Right, but it could be a sort of projection.
You think?
I don't think so.
I'm trying to the things that I want to talk about. I can't remember if they're an Oathbreaker or not, so I can't bring them up. But like, we get more exploration of the idea of that concept in Rhythm of War, I think.
But that's different kinds of investiture. So has he gone to different places and learned how to do different investiture?
Maybe.
I don't think so, but maybe.
I mean, we're not sure. Because that's another thing that's interesting about this, because everything I know about Kelsier as a person, it's like, well, why did he even leave the Bands of Mourning here? And the reason why he would, which is a light Cosmere revelation in Rhythm of War, is that it's hard to carry certain investiture between different worlds. So taking the Bands of Mourning with him on his adventures would be useless. So that makes me think Kelsier is not around right now.
Well, and he definitely in Secret History, when he's talking to Spook, is like, he mentions the Cosmere. So it would seem he is maybe exploring outside of Scadrial, maybe.
I mean, I would expect in the time between Era 1 and Era 2 for him to have probably done some exploration.
He probably has.
The way that the returned work is different. They basically consume investiture to keep their dead bodies going.
Yeah. Basically, Sanderson has a lot of different variations on zombies. And people only talk about them directly in Elantris, but I think he has lots of different variations on zombies.
Could be. Yeah, that checks.
So, yeah. What I did find... Okay, so a positive thing for me about the Secrets of Mistborn that I read was it was nice being back in the aesthetics of Mistborn Era 1, because I do think I like those aesthetics more. And also just third hand getting to see Vin be awesome. Vin's just so awesome. So I liked like a third hand perspective of seeing some of her more epic moments from like far away. But I do think I treat Secret Mistborn like it has cool Cosmere stuff, but it's like Lion King 1.5, where it's like I totally didn't need this. It's fine.
And like Elle said, Kelsier just came across kind of juvenile. And
but he's always been that way.
I don't feel juvenile.
On reread, I agree with Angela. I think it made more sense and it felt more... because he's put in a situation that he has no planning for, and because he's also a little bit... I was going to say scarred, but that was more like a pun, but like damaged because he has gone through a lot of bad stuff. I could see him, especially with the personality that he has already exemplified in Mistborn, being a little on the goofier side. You know, it was the same way when I first read it. I was like, Fuzz is stupid from that point forward, which is like the beginning of the book. I'm like, this is awful. But the second read through, I'm like, it kind of checks, right?
I don't think
remember he names kids Spook. Like he's like
right.
He gives people nicknames that are dumb all the time.
I know.
But he punches him in the face, and then he punches the other one in the face.
When hasn't he tried to punch himself out of a situation?
I don't know.
He couldn't use
again before this, and I feel like Kelsier wasn't that ridiculous and obnoxious. I feel like it was a little bit more like I liked the part when he's like, okay, I need to come up with a plan. I've been doing this a long time. This is what I do. And like the part where he's conning them, I'm like, that makes sense because you get a little bit of Kelsier the thief, Kelsier the con man, which I liked because you don't actually see the thieving aspect of Kelsier really in Era 1. So I liked that. But then he, to me, started to become more like Sanderson's goofier characters, and he's a character I thought was always like normal, but everybody sees something's like a little off, but it's like it's almost forced in the Final Empire. Like he's constantly forcing himself to be uplifting to others and to push through the pain because somebody has to, because it's so dreary. Like he needs to be that ray of light. And so I don't know, it almost feels like I was waiting for his walls to come down a little in Era. He
loses a little bit of his emo element where he references like the fact that he has a dead wife and he references the pits all the time, but he definitely has a lot less seriousness. I mean, I know what you're saying.
Yeah,
I don't love the message that if you want it bad enough, you won't die. If you just want it hard enough.
Because in my mind, I'm like, well, somebody else would have wanted it, I feel like. But also, I feel like he only barely thinks of his wife. Like, he's just kind of like, I still want to stick around.
In Secret History, correct. Yeah, I think
that makes that one reference, right? When he like touches the block and sees the green grass and the flower.
Yeah. Right. And I like that, but it's like, that's it. I would have liked.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that's part of, and I think this is something that like, so when we read Mistborn Era 1, we get two perspectives of Kelsier. We get Kelsier's own perspective of himself, and we get Vin's perspective of Kelsier, which Vin is like, oh my God, this person's taking me in. He is larger than life. And then Kelsier, he, I think, does a lot of self-compromising of like, I am doing this for this. And even Vin at the end of Secrets Mistborn is like, well, are you actually doing it for that? Or is there something that's like, you're doing it because you have this drive in you? And this drive is both good when you're using it for good, but it's like dangerous. And we are seeing that Kelsier is definitely a more neutral to gray element in the Cosmere now. And I think this was meant to be sort of a transitionary exploration because it doesn't feel a lot like what we have put Kelsier into. At least for me, like it's like
I think he always seemed really because him like just slaughtering nobles without.
No, yeah, but I just felt like a lot of his stuff still worked for me here, and then there were lots of parts of Kelsier in the novella that I didn't like because I think Sanderson makes it very apparent that the way people can access the cognitive plane, you know, through mental health issues and stuff, is not because people are flawed or bad or broken or mad, but Kelsier can only think of these people as broken and mad, like the way he
until later, yeah.
Yeah, like, you know what I mean? Like, he really uses really harsh language in his head, and I think that's intentional. Like, I think this is a more realistic version of Kelsier because you get to see someone who they, like, really are when they truly have no options. Like, he's just like, I have none of my normal tools. I am out of my element.
The point at which we see Kelsier in the original trilogy in the Final Empire, he has already made his plan, and he's already enacted the plan in motion. In this point, he has no idea what he's supposed to do.
Yeah.
And so I kind of see that element, but I also, like I said, when the first time I read it, I felt the exact same way. So I see both perspectives.
I think I wanted to see. Oh, I'm so sorry, Stephanie.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, you know, we know that he was somewhat broken when he was in the pits of Hathsin because that's when he snapped. And that's when, you know, he saw his wife die. And I guess that was a moment where Kelsier had nothing and then had to make a plan. And I kind of wanted to see that where it's like this person who's because he just died, he's watching his world almost be destroyed, so I wanted to see him like with that I am going down low but I'm going to come up out of this sort of moment, as opposed to he never really feels like he has emotions.
He doesn't get as dark as you would expect him to get, right?
Yeah but
what were you gonna say? Yeah.
Oh, she's gonna say I didn't hate it, but I agree. I feel like we got more emotions from him in Era 1.
From the little bit when we think about just how much he's there.
Yeah. So wasn't my favorite. I can see its importance, but
I had a Hoyd question. So I'm going to talk about Hoyd if anyone cares about talking about Hoyd, because Hoyd is very important to Mistborn books. He's like in every single one of them. How many times does he change his hair color? Do we know? Because he has a different hair color.
His hair is naturally white.
Okay, because it's different in Stormlight, right?
I think it's black in Stormlight because he looks more like a Lethe. I think.
Okay.
And I think it depends on his disguise, because if he's pretending to be an old man, I think he lets. But he notices that Kelsier notices it's still him because his hair is white, even with the ash mixed in. So I think he tries to make it look dirtier and darker.
Yeah.
And obviously we're viewing this through Kelsier's perspective in Secret History, but is this the first time that we've been given an opportunity to view Hoyd from a character and be like, maybe this guy is sus. Like maybe he's not just a benevolent dude helping out every single world.
Yeah, I feel like this one is the most what is this guy up to?
Except if you happen to read, so it is the first time, except if someone reads the new version of Elantris, there's an end scene with Hoyd in the new version that's a little also like, what are you doing?
I might need to reread that or check
it's a very end of it. It's not in the book. It's like it's like the extra stuff you get from the 10th anniversary.
Oh, then I probably do have it. I just don't remember it. But yeah, you definitely see it from a perspective, and then it makes you think, what the frick is his deal? Because he is just going around, and it's one of those situations where, like, he's acquiring a lot of power, and this could go only two ways. Really,
especially in Secret History, right? Because he like hijacked some spirit's body and is like riding around
on like a boat. Which frick, I don't even know if I.
And I mean, I love that we got to meet the people who I think they're the people who write the Arcanum Unbound, right? Like that's who we meet in Secret History. I'm pretty sure.
That would make sense. I've never read. I've never read any of the.
You mean the parts at the back of the book of each books with all? Yeah, they're written by a character in World. We met them in Secret History.
And I mean the Ars Arcanum that he could, because Arcanum Unbound is the book.
Sorry, I get them. Yeah, but the people who write the stuff at the back.
They wrote Alamancer Jack.
I've never read those before.
Okay, well they're written by someone, and that someone was at the campfire. You can see a picture of her, I think, in the White Sand books, which I haven't read. But
I read them; they're fine.
Yeah, it's interesting because we see an Elantrian in this book. We get talks of a Threnody. Is a Threnody? I don't know what they said.
Theronite or something.
Yeah, like we get to see another planet, but it's like the first time somebody swears and the Elantrians swear. You're like, oh, that's interesting.
No, and that's another thing is like the last time we've been in Elantris, they were just coming back, and like I don't know where we are in the Elantrian timeline with Mistborn and stuff like that, but like these people were real like. They were very like self-centered in their actions and stuff like that, like trying to get a new shard and stuff like that.
Yeah, timeline-wise, isn't Stormlight occurring at the same time as Era 2? And we
I don't remember.
I'm pretty sure, and Era 1 is 300 years before. I'm trying to remember where Elantria falls.
What?
We just witnessed a light bulb moment.
I'm just reading White Sands now, and I knew the name Chris sounded familiar, but I couldn't figure out why that was, and it's because I hadn't connected the White Sands to the cosmos.
I've been waiting because I hear a new bind-up.
Slow leak light bulb moment.
Yeah.
Well, they used a different name for Hoyd, so I highlighted it for whenever I want to go back and figure things out again one day.
Have we seen that name before? Because I feel like I recognized it, but I might have recognized it from here.
No, we're talking about in Secret History, Mistborn, whatever those. I can't remember the name of it to save my life.
Mistborn : Secret History.
It's because there's a colon. Colon should be not allowed.
Makes it more memorable.
It's a weird out of context quote, but okay.
Colons are amazing, and leave them alone.
Also, a weird out of context quote.
Oh, that's good to know because I need to reread those short stories because it's been like. Oh, I read them in 2015. I really like those short stories. They're really fun.
See, the problem is I also have questions that I can't. Frick, I'm done. Just
okay, put it in the private chat. No one here look at the private chat.
I can't even talk about the private chat because
I
think it's related to like the next year's like preview chapters.
Oh yeah, you can't because I don't know anything yet.
Right, I can't even say anything.
I'm sorry, Michael. I'm so sorry.
Frick.
Preview chapters of what? Like the secret projects?
Right.
There's already preview chapters out?
He did them when he dropped the...
Okay.
Like,
yeah, I'm just waiting for them to arrive, but that's what I always do. I'm like I don't know, am I a fake fan? I never read any of the early chapters. I just wait for the book.
They're the only ones that have...
Sense. I mean,
they put like a third of Lost Metal out, so I might like get an early jump like the week before the book actually releases because you hosts read really fast sometimes.
Right.
I read a lot
mainly
of...
that one.
I read a lot of Rhythm of War before it was out. There was the sample ones, and I think I know I got sent. I don't know if I got sent what all the samples were going to be, but I read through that, and I'm like, I need the book now. So I completely get why you wouldn't want to read those samples. I don't think it makes you a fake fan.
Yeah,
Might as
well,
well
no,
wait
it's
till,
just
like,
like,
the
I
week
just know a lot of
before.
people like do it, and I know some people find a lot of fun from that type of like anticipation and discussion and stuff.
Yeah,
It does hurt though.
I was talking to Jessie May when I read the samples, and I sent her a message, and I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna send you my thoughts without actually being specific at all, so it doesn't spoil anything. And then I uploaded that to a video. I was like, this was my reaction, and it was a lot of, oh my gosh. And then this thing happened that I was like, what, are you serious? And then after that, something else happened, and I'm like, no way. And it was just, it sounded so dumb, but it was very genuine.
I love that. Oh, this is more talking about what we think might happen in Lost Metal, what we hope might happen. But there was something brought up by Pete in the Discord that in Shadows of Self, they refer to Atium or Atium, however you say it, as the Lost Metal. And I don't know if that's what the Lost Metal will be or how that would even work, because that's the body of Harmony now, presumably. But
yeah, I also was assuming that the Lost Metal might have to do with the 11th metal, potentially another metal, because there's 16. But I do think it probably, in context, it does seem to be referring to Adium, which is interesting, because in Mistborn, Adium's only usable by Mistborns, correct?
yes.
And there is no
and the
Mistborns.
Mistings who can burn Atium.
No,
But also, we know, if you read this, Mike, we know all 16 metals now.
Oh, do we? I didn't.
Yeah, we know them all.
I'm sorry.
I
missed the assignment.
Mistings are the ones that were
help Ellen burn the body, right? At the very end.
Yeah.
Oh, frick, you're right. Okay. It's been a minute.
But also,
not for us. We just read it, so
I'm lazy.
Because that's how, like, the connection is beryllium and then aluminum. We know nicrosyl and chromium, electrum and bendalloy and cadmium are the new ones. But we know all 16.
Has electrum been mentioned?
I don't remember it, but
well, because it reveals your own future and it stores determination, so it's not a very sexy metal.
Because isn't it similar to gold?
Yes, it's paired with gold.
Yeah, I would not want to burn that one.
It's not a very sexy metal. It's not fun.
I'm almost positive there's a scene where somebody uses electrum.
Okay. But yeah, no, so electrums with gold. But no, Mike, you should really look at this. They really tell you a lot about...
It almost seems like it would be a really useful resource that's put there for a reason, but yeah, it can't be true.
Well, plus it's more interesting than usual because it is written from like a perspective. There are like paragraphs.
That's cool. I didn't even realize
like a person. Like it's someone's own like scholarship voice.
Yeah, it's not just like the table of the metals. It is more than that.
I think the comment about the pits forming naturally at some point, that makes sense if preservation had with the well of ascension, then it would make sense that would come about too. But I remember that they referred to Atium as a lost metal, and I didn't know if that is actually what we're talking about, or if they feel like it's that because nobody knows about it now, like what happened to it. And maybe so in their minds it's the lost metal, but is it really?
I think maybe we get another Indiana Jones adventure. It sounds like an Indiana Jones title of like going to go find a thing.
Sure.
It's funny because there's so much about Trell in the synopsis of the Lost Metal, and I'm like, we've hardly talked about that, I think.
Well, Trell just like set off a bomb and is like, okay, we're gonna kill everyone now. Like that's like the end of Bands of Mourning, and I'm like overwhelmed.
It's true, but I think it also is alluded to it like the death scene. Like I think that's supposed to be Trell when you see the red stuff around the world. Like it makes the synopsis make more sense for like the end of the world is coming, and you're like, okay, well, I guess that's where we're going with this. But I could see if you hadn't read that, like not knowing that's the direction we're going.
Yeah.
Well, it's been a couple mentions. It hasn't really been a major.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just funny that it seems like it's going to be such a huge focus of the next one. Do you think that Trell is someone we have seen elsewhere?
I was thinking it's someone we've seen elsewhere, especially because... But you were saying Mistborn Era 2 and Stormlight are the same, right? Like the same timeline?
Yeah.
So that's why I question my assumption, because if Stormlight was with Mistborn Era 1, then I could see that this Mistborn Era 2 is after Stormlight, and maybe it is a player from that over here.
Are we assuming that Trell is the real name of somebody that is?
No, I think it's a pseudonym for a different person.
But it's somebody that's holding a shard, presumably. So if it was, I mean, it has to be a world hopper then, right? Like from.
I mean,
somewhere.
I was wondering just because of another character who is briefly mentioned at the end of another book, who seems to have a similar scene to what we see at the end of. I'm trying to be vague because Stephanie hasn't read it, but there's a big bad, like there's a bad antagonistic character in Rhythm of War, and then before they go, there's somebody who appears, and it's very similar to what happens in the end of Bands of Mourning, and like the name, is Roger looking it up?
Someone says they
think slightly before Era 2.
Okay, so then if it is, I think it might be who we're thinking of.
Right.
Especially because of the red. A lot of the red makes me think it's red. For those who
according to the 17th shard, and I figure those nerds probably know.
They do. They put in so much work, truly.
Yeah, it's a very nice, beautiful timeline.
The people in the middle of Secret History definitely seem to have a personal relationship with the original shard holders, right?
Which people are we talking about? The Irie people?
The campfire people?
No, the campfire people.
Yeah, they've been around a minute.
Like that's, I like how it's just this like kind of spin-off novella thing. And you're like, hey, these people are like stupid important and they're dropping serious bombs. But if you just read the books, you can just like care about Kaladin's story. That's fine. I don't know.
No, I mean, yeah, truly, but yeah,
it's so weird though that's like going to be. So
there are a lot of people who live longer than we think they should be allowed to live.
Right.
I heard Trell and immediately thought Brashen.
Yeah, I saw that.
Brashen.
Wrong series, wrong realm.
What is Brashen?
Oh my god! First of all, you've read Ship of
You
Magic.
know who Brashen is.
Brashen Trell, Ship of Magic. Anyways, I'm ignoring you.
And your horrible take on Ship of Magic?
Okay, that's why I don't know, because I'm like, who the
Roger is the only one here who's allowed to not know.
Okay.
Brashen is.
He's the dude. He's the dude.
He is a dude. That's accurate.
He's the dude, though. Like the dude in the book.
He was Ephraim's like kind of right hand man.
Right. He's the dude that's not Kyle or Kenneth. Right.
That's true. Yeah.
Or Winthrow. Yes, he's the character.
Winthrow's not a dude. He's a kid.
I think this is like all caps. The dude.
I don't even want to talk about live ships. Okay.
I know. I didn't want to go down that path. I just was just like.
I sent Roger such a long message of like, okay, I'm gonna tell you why I didn't like the third one.
I mean, I don't know for sure. I need to go look into your thoughts in the live shows because I was busy about those. But I
feel like I was trying to hold back in the live shows. But
I have a prediction because I think something. I mean, I have to imagine if you were as angry as you were, the thing that bothered me had to astronomically annoy you because I think it's actually very 90s.
From the scene, and if I say the scene, you probably know what I'm talking about. The scene to the end, I was like, I don't like any of this.
Yeah, okay, yeah, though that's why Ship of Destiny isn't my favorite. I think it's such a 90s way of handling that arc. And it's not.
Well, how dare you?
Which isn't that good of an excuse because, I mean, it was published 98 to 2000, so that was technically published in 2000. So she should have been better.
But, okay, first of all, Roger, you and I consume Charmed, and Charmed is not the place for... It's the same level of feminism as Charmed.
I don't know, because what I was hearing about is not really themes explored in Charmed.
I don't know. We can talk about it later.
But Roger might end up hate reading it.
That's fine. But also, like, I feel like Roger will end up between us because that's what's happened with Fitz as well.
I don't know.
I haven't read Assassin's Quest yet, so there is still time. I'm planning to read it in whatever next month is, November.
Assassin's Quest.
We have
coming at me for
Charmed,
Charmed,
Karen. You aren't wrong. We've gone off the rails.
Are you coming at me for Charmed, or are you just asking why are we talking about it? No. Are you trying to fight me in the street?
That's my mom.
Okay. Is your mom trying to fight me in the street, Stephanie?
We love Charmed here. This isn't a negative about Charmed. It's just sometimes we accept things that are not thematically perfect.
Yeah. She's not into paranormal type things.
Well, yeah, that show would definitely not be for her. Yeah, that would.
So I watched that in my room, not in the living room where everyone could watch it.
Assassin's Quest doesn't make you hate Fitz more. You are a better person than me.
Now we're gonna be coming
Stay
for
tuned,
Michael.
Maya.
We are not here to hurt Michael with Wax and Fitz hate. That's not
Hey,
what we're
no,
doing.
the problem
you
is
like Wax.
I'm okay. Michael and I can like band together, but Fitz, he's all on his own. I'm like, no.
Well, no, Stephanie likes Fitz, I think.
Oh, okay.
I like him, but I don't love him. I understand why people hate him.
I really need to read that, and I need to read Emperor's Soul. I need to read a lot of those.
Oh, you haven't read Emperor's Soul either. I'm not the only one.
Yes. I
I haven't read it.
Okay, we should like totally do. We don't have to do it live unless people really care, but we should do a buddy read of all the short stories and stuff because I've been wanting to reread all of them.
I'm probably going to be including them in my.
Okay, in your like Sanderson stuff. Cool.
Yeah.
Are you going to do it in chronological order according to the 17th shard? Because the different friggin' short stories come at different points, apparently.
I think I'll try to pair them with the book that they most make. They make them
apparently apparently the Emperor's Soul comes after Elantris, and I didn't realize that.
Well, it was I mean,
I mean
don't
like
think
chronologically
it really
in world timeline.
Is it the Cosmere
publication
where the chronological order breaks up some short stories by chapters to be like you read this chapter first and then this chapter and then go back to this book?
They don't do it here.
When I do a reading order for Witcher, the collections of short stories have they're out of order. And so I mentioned like, here is the order of the books, because this was before it was widely known. I'm like, here's the order of the books. And then I say, there are collections of short stories that are not in chronological order. If you care about that, here's the order. And I had so many people like, this is so confusing. And I'm like, I told you at the beginning, here's the order for the books. Here are the short stories. Here's the order chronologically for those. And it's like, if you just needed the book information, you just stop watching after like 30 seconds. And then if you want the other stuff.
I was about to make a very blanket mean statement. I feel like as someone that is a gamer, I'm allowed to say this. People that played The Witcher and they're like, oh, I'm going to pick up books now. They may not be. That's all I'll say. They may not be.
I mean, Michael, we've had conversations about first experiences on BookTube, like how different the reactions were to like most booktubers versus because I talked about Witcher a lot. I was like, wow, people on the internet, I mean, I knew they were mean, but they really are mean.
It's because they were great. I love, listen, like
Roger, when you were saying that, well, that person was annoying, but when you're like, first time having to hide someone, I'm like, first time.
I had to ask, I was like, help, how do I hide somebody from my because they're being mean to me.
See, the only thing that comes from me is because like I choose to try really hard every year to like recommend Latinx books and look for them. God forbid I say Latine or Latinx, then like the half of the community that's very bigoted comes for me in my comments to tell me how no Latinos ever use those words. Meanwhile, I'm a Latina using those words, and I'm like, I understand that not everyone agrees with those word usages, but it's like I'm just using an inclusive word. Like,
for me, they literally just told me they hate my entire vibe.
Well, Roger, it is aggressive.
Oh.
I love your vibe.
And I was like, okay, hide from channel.
Well, it's funny because I'm like, I mean, that's just part of being a human. Some people you don't click with. But
you don't need to comment.
I don't know why people say mean things. I'm just like, would you like someone to say this to you? Like, I don't understand.
See, I didn't start getting super negative stuff until I started making jokes that could be perceived as mean. And that's when I was like, you know what? I made a mean joke. Yeah, they don't
For me,
get
I
it,
even worked my butt off to not be super mean about Babel. I really thought hard about how I said anything.
I mean, I love Babel, and I loved your review. I thought it was great.
I tried very hard to not be like, I hate this so much. I try to like really think about it.
I know, Roger.
Like, this is the video. If you came for me on House of Sky and Breath, fine, because I like crapped all over that book. But Babel, I tried.
I know,
and
Roger.
Also, like, I honestly think anyone who comes at your review and doesn't see how respectful you're being and how you're being like, hey, as someone who's in academia, and I have been in academia, these are why, like, that's why I haven't picked up Babel, because as someone who's spent 29 years of my life in academia, essentially, like so long of being in school, it's like, I'm done with it, and there's a lot of toxic shit, and I don't think that's in this book, and you told me it's not in that book, and I'm like, well, I don't want to be there. So.
I was gonna say, Roger, the difference when I have my wrap up go up where I talk about live ship, you can compare how I word it there versus when I talk to you, and you can see that's what I feel like I do anytime I don't read a book. It's
I know. Every time I'm watching your wrap up, when I hear the way that you really hold back on it, I'm be like, "Elle, I need the deets."
That's what one time Jessie sent me a message. She's like, "Okay, can you tell me like all your in-depth thoughts about this one book?" She's like, "Because I have a feeling you really didn't like it, but you were just being nice."
I do that with Bethany sometimes because Bethany's also someone who's like, I gave this like 1.5 stars, and she like moves on, and I'm like, but it's Project Hail Mary. I need you to tell me why.
Because of Project Hail Mary.
Yeah.
I haven't read it.
I did have one more thing that I thought might be something of interest in Lost Metal, and I thought it was interesting that it was explored in this book. But that's the whole, we're so centralized government and we don't focus on the outskirts, and how basically a civil war is maybe on the horizon, but also we just found a new community that we're trying to trade with. Like, I don't know if that's going to pan out. It felt like something we like set off in motion and then never engaged with.
I mean, I obviously love the Cosmere, but Sanderson is the king of let me bring up a really important or interesting topic, and like it's kind of sidelined because I just want to tell you about these characters. So I wouldn't be anticipating too much.
I agree with what you're saying, Michael, and I do think sometimes he'll do that, and then in the next book be like, "There's been a little bit of time that's passed," and then that thing I mentioned is like suddenly a really big deal.
Right. I mean, yeah. It's not that I don't even think he has to do it differently. I think it's fine that he chooses to focus on the stories he chooses to focus on, but he does do the thing where he kind of teases something really interesting sociopolitically, and then kind of just
move on. I think he almost has to, though, because it wasn't just kind of mentioned. It was like a pretty big deal that there was like this fomenting rebellion, especially in the outer towns, and them having lack of access to be even able to travel between them without going through Ellendale.
Yeah. Like, which, if anyone's wondering, that's Boston. That is what public transit is in Boston. You cannot go that. You have to go in and then out. It's horrible. I felt very seen, but it's really bad. Look at a Boston train map. It's really bad.
I think
I feel like sometimes he does kind of mention and then not follow through, but this time I felt like it was he's been fomenting that rebellion the whole time.
True.
I think it was especially prevalent when he was in New Saren is what it's called, right?
Yeah.
Like so, that you're like going there and then being there so he understands a little bit more. But I think part of this is due to, I think Sanderson has his worlds that are so well realized that it's almost like, well, I want readers to know that these things are going on as well, because they're going on in the world, because it plays a role in all these other things, but then sometimes we don't actually go there, and then it can, as a reader, feel like, why didn't we do anything with that?
It's not the focus of what he's actually trying to do, but it comes up in the conversation where if you're interested, you're like, oh, but I really wanted to see what that was about. And that happens, I mean, that happens a lot in like Stormlight with the whatever the interludes are called. Like, where you're like, oh, that was really interesting. Could I go see that? And you're like, no, that's not the important part.
That's funny.
I feel like Stormlight is a much bigger world that he spends more attention on, whereas Mistborn is a much more contained world. And like, arguably, Shadows of Self, that was what it was all about. Bleeder was fomenting rebellion in the city, and now we're seeing rebellion in the outskirts. So it has to play a role in Lost Metal.
True.
Otherwise, I'd be very surprised.
Yeah,
that's a good point.
Also, like, I mean, he's trying to juggle a lot of things, but unsurprisingly, this last book is the longest in the series. I just looked it up. It's going to be 520 pages, when this one's like 430. And Shadows of Self is
we
like,
went,
it's like, well, it's still all shorter than the first Mistborn book. So.
If you combine it all, that's sad.
It's short for Sanderson. It's short for epic fantasy in some ways.
500 is pretty average, like 500 to 600.
Yeah, I think when things get mentally for me, if things get above 600, I'm like, okay, well, why are you above 600?
That proves that our brains are broken. Yeah,
I do think word count might be helpful to note, because sometimes like the print of the book,
the margins and stuff,
and things can, so maybe they're actually a little longer than we realize. I'm pretty sure E. Schwab, in an interview or something, or like an event that I saw her talking at, she said that the last book in Shades of Magic, the original trilogy, it was supposed to be much longer, and they crammed more words per page so that it wouldn't be, because it already,
I think that was Rhythm of War. Like, the margins got way, like, because Rhythm of War is longer than Oathbringer, but it's less pages.
The book is smaller, yeah.
I think it's still more pages.
It is more pages.
Is it more pages? Okay.
It is more pages, but it's
like
also
substantially more hours on the audiobook.
Like thinner. Like the book is actually physically thinner. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like how it's right behind. I guess I can just look.
It's right behind all of us because I see it right behind Angela's shoulder.
Yeah, this is my Cosmere section.
Here. It's over there. Not read yet.
Yeah, Oathbringer is bigger. It's weird.
I remember since I had the physical arc, somebody commented, they're like, the fact that Rhythm of War is so much smaller just immediately makes me not want to read it. I'm like, okay.
It's bigger. It's just thinner pages, home slice.
I could vibe with just wanting more stuff. I'm the guy that likes your 3.5-hour movies, so yeah.
Sean, there's a line in Stormlight about like, well, the sequel always has to be bigger. And Sean's like, I feel like that's his cheeky way of saying they're going to keep getting longer. And he's like, stop, cut them down a little.
Go ahead.
Well, I just read a book where the author was obviously yelling at reviewers because it was a line about, isn't showing just telling anyways? Because, people are like...
It is. It's true. Will Stormlight Book 6 be shorter than The Way of Kings?
We're going to have to start breaking them up like in the UK.
I
they're
don't read
uncomfortable to read
anymore because they're like Bible pages now, so I don't read them. I just collect them because they look pretty. The next one's got to be green. If it's not green, I'm going to riot.
The ARCs pages are really thin, Angela. You can see really
paper cut.
Versus and I'm so annoyed because Elle has these really great covers, but I have first printing of Way of Kings, so it actually has real paper, real thick paper that you can't even read through it, but it's too thick for the things she has because they reprinted it to be smaller, so the binding.
Oh, the Kraken. She has the Kraken ones.
Yeah, so I'd have to buy new versions of these books if I wanted those. Because my Words of Radiance is a sad time. My Words of Radiance is struggling.
So Angela, did you hear you'd be on her level because she had to buy new editions for the Kraken?
I didn't.
Did you get rid of these first though? Because you got rid of these.
I returned the hardcovers a while back because I'm like, I just love the feel of those floppy paperbacks. But then
I think about it a lot. But I can't keep reading it on ebook, so I don't need the leather and these and the paperback.
I wish it was faux leather and that it was not as expensive.
I mean, compared to so what I like about the Sanderson exclusive versus other exclusive things like Subterranean Press or whatever is they're still actually cheaper than those in Folio Society, and it's bound better, and it's always eventually available to any fan who wants it. I hate how exclusive other exclusive things are. I'm like, excuse me, I would pay $200 for a special edition of a Jemison book, but wait, it's $1,200 because they only printed 500. Why?
Yeah. I think just because they know it'll be on demand and then they don't have to sell it.
I think it's because publishers make certain deals and Sanderson sets up his contracts in specific ways where he can do what he's doing. Not every author has that power. So.
Plus, I really like when I read from the leather bounds that I buy. I don't just display them.
I have read my Elantris.
It's such a nice reading experience, at least for the Warbreaker one, because then it's the two-tone printing. There's some purples in there and some of the text, and then I got the edition where it was. Yeah, I got the edition where the art was on a pearlescent paper because it was from the original Kickstarter, and which goes very along with Warbreaker and all of the
Warbreaker didn't come out as a Kickstarter. Way of Kings came out of the Kickstarter.
There was a Warbreaker something because when you first got Warbreaker, the first printing of it had a special kind of paper, and then later printings they got rid of it. I have
that special kind of paper, but I just bought it on his website, when it first came out.
I don't remember how. It was a while ago.
Yeah, I do love the end pages for it though.
Yeah, the art is beautiful.
No, because this is the paper you're talking about, this shiny paper here.
Yeah.
No, they're really well bound. Yes, it's $100, but I've seen special editions that cost more that are not as good.
100 is not bad for that production level, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it is expensive, but it's
Sean and McGuire's tiny books are $20-something. I'm pretty sure. I'm like, really? This is.
That's like me with Nettle and Bone. It was very good, but why was it so expensive for a 200-page book?
I know. Isn't it amazing that it's so short? It's it's a good story. So I'm like, okay, so we can tell a good fantasy story, and it's much more contained. I'm just being a butt.
All right. So, are there any other Lost Metal, Bands of Mourning, Secret History, Cosmere thoughts? Because we are just getting off on tangents, which is fun, but it sounds like we've run out of things to talk about.
I mean, for things I want to see in the Lost Metal, I want to see more of what's going on in that other community down south. I want to like go there and visit. And I want to know more about why the bands were kind of where they're at, and more, if we're going to go down the Kelsier route, I want to see more of what he's doing or what he was doing. I know in Secret History he mentioned that he could write Secret History 2 and Secret History 3. So that makes me concerned that we're not going to get any of what Kelsier was doing, and that Lost Metal is going to be very focused elsewhere.
Yeah. I'm afraid of that exact thing. I don't think he's actually going to give us that.
Yeah, Mike is...
I mean, the only thing that I don't...
But if it's 500 pages, he has room.
The thing that I'm most worried about is Theris. Like...
Mike, who are the characters that if he kills, you're burning your book? I don't actually think I know.
It's Theris.
If he kills Theris, you're done.
That would really hurt.
I did, yeah.
He will.
I took some flack for talking about burning books on YouTube, but you know.
I don't think he will, because he already killed Bleeder.
I mean, he better not.
I feel like all right if he kills Wax and resurrects him again, then I'm done.
Yeah, no. If we kill and resurrect one more time.
I'm fine with Wax becoming like a world hopper, but yeah, he shouldn't die again.
I mean, like it's more likely that something would happen. Not that I'm saying it would, but I feel like, I mean, I could see Wax dying. Not saying it will, or that I think.
No, I could see that, and like I don't have beef with that as much.
As long as he doesn't come back, just let him go. Let him pass on through the void.
As much as, yeah, I mean, as much as I love Wax, the way he came back was pretty.
Do you think anyone of our group is going to become a world hopper? Oh my gosh, I feel like Wayne will.
I heard somebody.
Wayne and Boyd are going to have a buddy cop.
Somebody in one of my discords was talking about,
him and Lopen. Can you imagine? Oh my god,
that's a lot of personality in one.
Let's have him, Lopen, and Lift on a quest together.
Yes,
I couldn't do that. No,
I'd skip. Okay, I'd turn into Jashana. I heavily skimmed 500 pages, and I got the gist.
If he shows up though in another, can you imagine other characters being like, "What are people like from where you're from?" Because he's already such an oddity where he's from, that if he's the person representing Scadrial, they're going to be like, what is going on
But he's planet? Also like the character most likely to blend into a scene and we don't notice it.
Yeah, that's true.
In terms of like Easter egging it up, like
true. He will be the character that seems like they completely belong, but they have like a one tiny weird thing, like time blips.
They're gonna be like, so where's your hat from? And then we'll go to the next scene.
I mean, I'd rather have a Kandra become a world hopper. I feel like that'd be way cooler.
Do you think Kandras can make it with their spikes though? I don't know. I think they're bound.
Maybe if they learned how to consume investiture, if they figured out some way.
I mean, isn't Trell a world hopper?
Okay, I don't know who you think Trell is. I'm going to type in the private chat who I think Trell might be, but I might be wrong.
So, Stephanie, don't look at the private chat.
Okay.
Well, it doesn't seem like there was a third shard.
That's not who I think.
Okay, type what you think. I want to know.
But that's what I'm saying. Like, the idea, because it seems very obvious in both Mistborn Era 2 and Secret History that Ruin and Preservation were the native shards to that world.
Correct.
And so the fact that Trell exists means that the shard world hopped or something, right?
Yeah. That's right.
Angela, that makes sense.
That's what I think, based especially after Rhythm of War. Like, that's what I think's happening, especially with the red eyes. And
I mean, that was my guess too, Angela.
But do you know the scene I'm talking about with the person I mentioned, where there's a character who?
Yeah. Yes, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
I don't remember.
I don't remember, but I believe you.
They're just like mentioned for a second.
Well, I feel like the end of Rhythm of War is maybe the most like fear-inducing moment that I've read in the Cosmere.
Terrifying.
You're like, oh, that seems extremely bad.
Maybe.
Have we convinced you to read Rhythm of War yet? Before we get to the Lost Metal, can you read Rhythm of War and the Lost Metal in like 2 weeks?
I mean, the Lost Metal will probably be reasonable, but Rhythm of I don't recommend it. I don't recommend it.
You do it.
The audiobooks.
The audiobook is so freaking long.
It's really long. And that's what happened the first time I read it. I tried to read it. I got through all the Stormlight. And then I started to read Rhythm of War, and we had a huge hailstorm. And so I had to stop. And now we're having another hailstorm. And so I'm like, I don't think I can fit it in.
If you listen to the audiobook of The Rhythm of War in 1 week, you are putting overtime in a full-time job.
Oh, I own it. I just haven't listened. I own it in ebook, physical copy, and audio, and I still
Right. That's what I'm saying. It's a
to get through the whole
55-hour
now.
audiobook.
Because we're getting to
I know.
Gathering Storm in December, so you have to read it now.
I know.
Oh yeah.
I'm gonna have to go back and like read some synopses before we get to the Gathering Storm because I'm like, it's been almost a year since I finished Knife of Dreams. I finished
Grace
it in January.
Dion does some good spoiler chats, so I think she probably has like a 20-minute spoiler chat on Knife of Dreams.
Yeah.
It's not like a synopsis video, but if you just want someone discussing her favorite moments from a book, and we'll probably...
I mean, I have a review of Knife of Dreams, so I go back and watch that, but I don't remember anything else previous, really. I remember like some of the big moments.
Yeah. I'm excited for you to join. I think it'll be fun.
Yeah, I want Condra because I want to hear Milan bitching about trying to like simulate the carapace of like the people in Roshar and stuff. That'd be hilarious.
Or her being like annoyed at covering one of her hands.
Yes. Also, Rich, you know who I am. Don't question why I can take long breaks between Wheel of Time books. Roger took a year.
Yeah, I finished it in January. So if you want to come for long breaks, come for me.
I think our one per season is like the perfect.
Yeah, we do about one per season. We doubled up for the slog because I didn't want to spend a year on the slog. I wanted to spend half a year.
The slog is literally the first time I ever picked up an audiobook. I had never read audiobooks before I got to the slog.
And then starting
in November or December last year, I finally was like, I can't read this anymore. Like I was literally
I'm really excited for the Cosmere implications in Gathering Storm.
I just want to say,
what are you talking about?
I respect that all of you like that series. I don't have anything to contribute.
Like is a very strong term for Angela's feelings about Wheel of Time.
Well, I'm just saying I have to go to the bathroom. So I'm gonna...
You'd rather go to the bathroom than talk about Wheel of Time.
We should wrap this up. Thanks everyone for watching and for hanging out with us. Keep posted here or in my Discord or following any of us. We'll post when we figured out when we are talking about the Lost Metal together.
When does it come out? The 14th?
The 15th for the US. Probably the 17th for the UK, but we're all US, so I think for us, the 14th.
It's the 15th.
15th, yeah. It's the Tuesday of that week.
Yeah. Michael, you can easily look this information up. Why are you...
I don't know how to read.
I'll disagree with you, Maya.
It's the 15th. It's the 15th. I just have the Amazon open. It's the
15th.
I'm definitely getting a review copy for that one, though.
They give those out.
Yeah, they give them, especially when you threaten to burn them. So.
Oh my god, no! I don't want crabs. I don't want them. They freak me out. That's like something I like block out of my head is in the Cosmere.
I feel like we've really deviated now, and we're talking about crabs.
Well, because of the Cosmere.
I'm gonna go.
Goodbye, everyone.
Bye.